My wife and the coach. Please accept my apologies for the lengthy article. My wife and I are 33 years old and have been married for 11 years. We reside in what was once a rural location that is quickly becoming a suburb of a medium-sized metropolis. Our high school graduation class had a little more than 200 students, and we are currently nearing 500 graduates. I was raised on a farm. My mother just did not return home one day when I was 6 years old, so my father reared me. I assumed responsibility of the property. In other words, I put in a lot of effort. My father eventually stopped farming and leased his land to other farmers. He got a job at manufacturing. He used the money from his lease to acquire additional land. He had a large number of properties during the Great Recession. On one of these estates, Dad offered me a home to fix up and build a family in. It's held in trust along with his other property, but we pay all of the costs. My wife grew raised in a lower middle-class family, a kind family that always treated me with respect. They relocated to the neighborhood when we were in junior high. We dated throughout high school and married after I had a solid job. Before that, I did everything to make a dollar. People would contact me if they needed to take garbage out of a barn. I can paint your home if you need it, if you understand what I mean. We have an 8-year-old kid. She is a stay-at-home mom. I now work as a route driver for a huge food business. I am on the verge of purchasing my route from the firm. I've more than increased the size by going into every mom-and-pop shop, grocery store, and gas station and selling as much merchandise as I could. Because the surrounding region is still rural, I have a big area. My objective is to complete purchasing the route before purchasing another vehicle. The intention was for the wife to drive the second truck. In my region, a supercenter grocery/merchandise is expected to be developed within the next year. It will be mine if I own the road. Otherwise, the corporation may divide my route. As a result, I must complete the route purchase. We've been married for a few years now, after graduating from high school. Our marriage has occasional hard patches, which I believe is due to the long hours I work. I make an effort to attend, but alas, am unable to do so. We've had a lot of fun and adore our son with all of our hearts. He's your ordinary adolescent. He is now interested in sports. He played basketball in the winter, baseball in spring, and flag football this fall. So, in the spring, we reached a low point in our relationship. My wife and I spoke about it, and we both promised to do better in the future. From late April to mid-June, our life was off the charts. We couldn't get enough of one another. To be honest, I may have gotten too much since I was dog-weary, but I still ran my route. My kid was out on the field. I never missed a game, but I didn't make it to all of his sessions. In most kids' sports, fathers play an active part in coaching or assisting. I just could not make that commitment. When assistance was required, my wife stepped forward. Ted, the baseball coach, is the ex-boyfriend of Mary, a high school buddy. She was the brightest student in the class. She went to college, which is where they met. They married and soon had a son, who is also 8 years old. Their marriage was on the rocks. Mary returned home 3 years ago to assist her parents in caring for the kid. Ted came here 2 years ago to be closer to their kid and, I believe, to reclaim Mary. We fell back into our rut around the middle to end of June. We chat again in July and agreed to recommit. We're going on a vacation. The relationship is still rocky. When mid-August arrives, the bedroom begins to heat up once again. After a few weeks, it cools off. September arrives, and we find ourselves in a deserted bedroom. I ask my wife to speak out, but she insists that nothing is wrong. My kid has begun playing flag football. He loves it. They practice twice a week and play once a week on Saturday. When I arrive at a practice, I see my wife and Ted with a clipboard conducting exercises with the kids. A number more fathers are also pitching in. I had no clue she was assisting me, so I bring it up when we get home. My kid is overjoyed and exclaims, "She's not assisting, she's a coach." She seems to have offered to be an assistant coach when she signed up her kid. It's fantastic in my opinion. This seems to take a long time. When I'm there, the wife is always texting, sometimes calling, but mostly texting. Every day after school, they go to Ted's house, where he works his son and mine out. He is teaching them how to be better, and it shows since they are the team's 2 best players. So, when their first game arrives, I work in the morning and make it to the field in time. Ted and his wife are providing instructions side by side. Someone places a chair next to me. It's Mary calling. We are watching the game. She asks whether the wife and I are doing okay about halftime. Sure, I tell her. When I glance over at her, she's staring at me. So I inquire, what? She said that her kid returned home after spending time at Ted's. It had been pouring, so there had been no exercise. They squandered the day away playing electronic games. When her kid walked to the kitchen to fetch more juice, he saw Ted and his wife kissing. He rushed back to the game and informed Mary what he observed that night at home. Every day, I wake up at 4 a.m. to travel 45 minutes to the warehouse to get my vehicle. So I got up at 3:30 a.m. on Monday to check her phone. She'd altered the password. I figured it out after a few attempts, since she uses like 4 or 5 different ones for everything. I saw text after text there. Some naked people. So I took some screenshots. Normally, I spend one day in town. If I had one, I would occasionally return home for lunch, especially when there was a lot of involved. When I arrived home, she was not there. I phoned her, but she did not answer. I drove past Ted's house and saw her automobile. I completed my journey. She said she was going to the supermarket. She apologized for missing me. I said that I was merely attempting to catch her off guard. It's not a huge deal. The next week, on the same day, I informed her that I would be returning home for lunch. I was parked just down the street from Ted's. I'm not sure how she didn't see my huge, large vehicle. She stormed out of Ted's. She jumped in her vehicle and drove home. I followed carefully, and when I arrived, she was preparing a lunch for me. We had a pleasant talk. Saturday after the game, I brought my kid home, changed him, and drove him to my father's house. They were going to fish in the pond, and he could swim if he wished. I returned home. The wife, of course, was not present, so I went to Ted's. Her automobile was parked nearby. I dialed her number. She seemed irritated, so I questioned what she was doing at Ted's. There was nothing but quiet. Then there's talking about the game. I urged her to get dressed and come home. She cursed at me and hung up the phone. I was seated at the table when she eventually returned home. She cursed me again for accusing her of anything. I motioned for her to take a seat. She resists, becoming more angry by the minute. I instructed her a bit more vehemently to sit down and shut up. Allow me to speak my bit. I had a folder with me, and she inquired as to what was within. I told her to take a seat so I could show her. I began taking screenshots of her messages. She freaked out when I said I was going to go through her phone. I then retrieved the most messages. She attempted to justify it. Then I'd take out the nudists. She remained silent. I informed her that we were finished. I'd give her till the next Sunday to go. On Monday, I was scheduled to see an attorney. Take her clothing and personal belongings. We'll sort it all out afterwards. She just sobbed. She expressed her regret. I recently posed a question I saw on a Reddit advice sub. What did you expect to happen when I found out? She didn't have a response. I've been staying at my father's house since the weekend. I returned my kid on Sunday so he could catch his school bus on Monday. I had explained to him that his mother and father would no longer be living together, but that he would continue to reside in his home. When I returned home tonight, all of her belongings were vanished. There was a message stating that she would pick up my kid after practice. We'd arranged that she'd pick him up after school. She could remain until I returned home, or I could drop him off at her parents' house.